Hello, and welcome to this episode of Manufacturing Matters, where we talk about the technologies and trends that are shaping the global manufacturing industry. I'm Aaron Hand with Tech B2B, here with my colleague and managing director, Winn Hardin. Today, we are here with Paul Osterhaus, managing partner at QOC Innovations, a company that is focused on ERP strategy and implementation. Welcome, Paul.
Thank you. Thanks for having me today.
So just to get us started, because I try to keep those intros short, why don't you just give us a quick rundown of QOC Innovations' place in the manufacturing ecosystem?
Yeah, so we specialize in Odoo implementation. Odoo is an open source ERP with over 16 million users worldwide. And so we have a team of 75, 80 people that we just do manufacturing and distribution implementations. Although we have a development team, and I stack our development team up to anybody there, but what really sets us apart is our manufacturing distribution knowledge. So we have our business consultants come from industry, and we're really just trying to change how this works, right? We've all been part of ERPs that are a struggle, and we're there to support and help our organizations, our customers, to get to the next level in a different way. And so that's our strategy, is to take care of them and do the right thing and to help them implement best practices and get to the next level in their business.
Okay, so that makes sense. So when I think about the manufacturing world, I just think how much everybody is drowning in data, and they don't necessarily know what to do with all of this data that they're gathering. That they're still starving for insight despite all of this. Yeah. So why is it that so much of that data in the plant is not getting used or not getting used correctly?
Yeah, I think there's lots of examples of that. And I think there's a lot of use cases around that. I think there are people that are starving for data, and there's still people that are looking for data, right? But for those that have a lot of data, a lot of times, maybe my data is stuck in a PLC on the shop floor. Maybe my data is in a silo over here. Like, how do we bring that together and make it actionable? Both so that we can have an improved understanding of throughput and our capacity, but understand like what is the costing associated with that. And so we find ourselves, I was in a conversation earlier today with a customer who said, hey, I need to be able to pull that data into my ERP, right? At a granular level so that I can understand from a quality perspective, when I was running this job, what was the cost? What were my parameters when I was running it? So if I have a quality issue, I can see that. So we find ourselves in that situation a lot, where we're trying to make people's data more actionable to them so that they have visibility. And we find pulling that into the ERP system makes a huge difference.
So we mentioned ERP, enterprise resource planning systems, right? It's super critical, and it becomes such a hot topic during the pandemic era, and then during the global international trade kind of era that we're in right now, which is posing some unique challenges as we move forward. How critical is it to have your ERP system connected to, or do you also need manufacturing execution systems like an MES or a warehouse management system, a WMS? Does ERP stand alone, or does it need to have this ecosystem built around it?
I think ERP, I think you're raising a great point. ERP has multiple definitions, right? For us, an ERP system both has the MRP process, it's managing the manufacturing orders, but also has the inventory side of it. So we're doing warehouse management too. So we're picking parts, we're shipping parts from there, but we also have the accounting side of it too, so that we understand the cost across the road. But it's critical that all of those things are talking to one another, and they're connected in a way that we're not siloed. So can I pull up a invoice and see the associated sales order that was tied to that invoice? And can I see the manufacturing order so I can do a job cost to say, okay, when I ship this part, did I make money or not?
Right.
I'm not looking at it at the month level, but having those all tied together with the parameters from the shop floor makes a huge competitive advantage for a customer.
Absolutely. And we haven't even gotten to the quality components that we're talking about, but I know we're going to delve deeper into that. And just in terms of process optimization, visibility is one thing, but optimization is really what we want. When I think of these discussions, I always think of the old engineering saw, right? You cannot manage what you do not monitor,
Right.
And I come back in our company all the time where we really focus on that. So I appreciate you adding that.
Yeah, it's not just about you've got to be able to see it, but you got to be able to take action with it. Can I look at, my parameters, my quality parameters throughout the entire day at the work center level, but then can I look at it from a particular job perspective to say, hey, I had a quality issue here, or I think I'm going to have a quality issue. I need to go look at these parts, or a customer contacts me with a quality issue. Let's go back and see what were the parameters running on that thing.
Absolutely, especially in clawback situations, it's so critical, or any kind of mission critical safety components. It's got financial benefits no matter what industry you're in, right? But
correct,
it's super cool.
Yeah. So prior to running to starting QOC, I used to run a fab shop, right, a job shop, right, and that was the constant thing, right? The OEMs are calling up and saying, hey, this is a bad part, and we're like, I don't think so, right? But you had to prove yourself, right? You weren't quite innocent until proven guilty, right? It was the opposite way. Like, you were guilty and you had to go prove your innocence. And so having that data makes a tremendous difference in just having the conversation, right? And I'm taking a quality perspective to this, but I could also take a financial or accounting perspective, right? Mm-hmm. Like, did we make money on this part?
Those two things go together.
They go right together, right? But did I make money on this part? Like, that's one of the questions I love to ask. Like, when I'm doing tours of manufacturers, when I get to the end, like, if we pull up a finished good, do you know on this unit, this serial number, if it was, did you make money on this particular unit? And 99% of the time, people are like, I think so.
Don't think no.
So people know that they want to optimize. I mean, I think all of this always sounds great. Yes, we do want this information. Yes, we need to know how much money we made on that, and they just hankering to get started. But you got to have all your prep in front of you, right? So what are the kind of hurdles that companies face when they're trying to modernize their operations?
Yeah, I always say the first thing we do is we don't want to boil the ocean, right? So we have people reach out to us every day that are either in failed implementations or are looking to say, hey, there's a use case, there's a reason, right? Maybe they can't get they've hit a plateau and they can't get to the next level from a sales or a throughput of their shop, or they're just running archaic systems and it's not getting the information that they need to them. But we always say, let's not try to boil the ocean. Let's figure out what you're really good at and how do we get you how do we get you onto a new system? And sometimes that can be done in different ways, right? Often you hear, well, you got to clean all your data up before you put it in a new system. We actually say, no, don't do that. Let's bring your dirty data in so that we have an apples to apples comparison of what you're doing today, right? Let's not clean up your data and then we can't ship orders because we changed the product numbers or we changed the customer.
We have no trend vector, in terms of
trends, right?
Yeah.
And then over the course of the time, when we're using new technology like Odoo, we can import and export data really fast, right? And we can use some data cleansing tools that allow us to put you at a different spot. But once we get somebody into the system, for us, it's Odoo, but once we get them there and we get their core capabilities working, right? Yeah. And where we see value, we want to get value within months, not within years, right? Maybe they're not running an MRP process. Maybe that's new for them. Maybe they're not doing quality to the level. Maybe they don't have the financials to the level. Let's solve those problems. And then over the course of time, then we'll extend out to figure out how do we pull PLC data into the ERP, or how do we go into payroll, or how do we go into name the whatever feature that you want to get to, right, is your end goal. But let's not try to boil the ocean right out of the gate.
I think that's super cool because I think these large scale enterprise systems they pose a risk for the C-suite, 100%, right? Huge investment. There's time to develop this. A lot of times parsing it down to what are our biggest pressure and pain points, right? And coming up with solutions there and knowing that the cost. So what I'm hearing from you is that the cost to deploy, I mean, maybe you're not looking at the full enterprise. We're looking at just problematic applications or segments of our process. The return from that can be enough to get a decent ROI. And then
that's exactly right.
Grow into a more fuller implementation.
Yeah, no, it's a scary thing to do, right? I ran this manufacturing firm. I was the one that made the decision to go forward with an ERP system. Like, right. That's a career level decision, right? You want a partner that understands, having made those decisions for it, and understands what it's like and understands your business inside and out. That's like, if I was to give any recommendation, anyway, that's the thing I would say is find a partner that's going to be with you and is going to jump off the cliff with you and help you to land safely, right? And has got the power both from a tech side, but also from a business process perspective, right? Understands the manufacturing, whether it's a fab shop, do they understand lasers and brakes and robots, or do they understand plastic extrusion, or whatever that is, they need to have deep domain expertise in that, because, they need to be guiding and leading best practices through that process.
If I could ask a quick follow-up on that. So we were talking and we're identifying a lot of the parts of the enterprise that Odoo and ERP systems can help solve. When folks come to you with a particular problem, right? When we're not trying to boil the ocean, what are some of the most common ways or parts of their day or their operation that people are bringing to you and said, I got this problem, can you help me fix it, improve, optimize? What are some examples?
So commonly, like job costing, understanding what actually their cost, what actually they're making on their parts, right? That is a common conversation. Capacity analysis is another one all the time, right? Like, how do I understand what I can actually commit to my customers, right? And I can get on a soapbox for this, right? And I don't want to be political at all, but we keep talking about bringing manufacturing back, and I'm 100% there. I'm 1,000%. We should be bringing manufacturing back.
Right.
But are we really helping our manufacturers to understand that when we bring this work back, that they have the capacity to do it, that they understand their costs, and that they're going to be profitable doing that, right? I don't want to bring it back and put somebody in a bad spot. I want to bring it back and make sure that that they're growing their business in a very sustainably helpful way, right? And so those are the kind of things that really I get passionate about, right? Is like, how do we help them solve their problems in a way that it's going to take them to, you said it earlier, Beth, right? How do we take that first step? And then let's take the value of that and apply it to the second one. And then it just starts to snowball through the process, right?
Manage growth, for goodness sakes, manage growth, right?
Yes, but don't try to do everything. Don't, like, it's going to be a failure if you try to just do every single bell and whistle out of the gate.
100%. All right. I want to ask more questions, but I'm going to hush up because I know Aaron's got one.
Well, I do want to, just looking at this visibility issue, and also, related to bringing manufacturing back, is that supply chain that has been, it really came to the fore at COVID, but it was already beginning to be an issue before COVID hit. And so I guess are manufacturers thinking differently about their supply chain? How do they get better visibility there?
Well, I think there's a lot of war wounds out there right now, right? Whether you've been in the steel
lessons
industry,
learned, hopefully lessons were learned from that, right? Pain teaches us more.
Yeah, but I think that everybody is sitting here going, okay, now what do I do, right? I think there's a lot of open things. So some of the things that we're getting involved with is visibility in the supply chain is all the way down to, like, QOC has developed a node which we can connect and gather real-time data from the shop floor, right? We're starting to put that in suppliers, right? So how do I get visibility to what somebody across the country or in Mexico or in China, like, how do I get visibility to what's going on in real time so that I can make those decisions, right? It just all comes back to our previous conversation. How do I make those actionable? How do I pull that data in so that I can make decisions in my scheduling? I can make decisions in my accounting. I can make decisions in how I'm planning for what I'm going to be doing.
Is there anything that manufacturers are getting wrong when they're looking at the supply chain visibility? Do standards come into play? When we talk about, especially if we're going downstream, it's usually going to be upstream, right? The way we want our visibility to come from. So, what are some of the pitfalls, or what are they getting wrong when they're thinking about it?
Yeah, I see people just not getting enough data, right? Just not getting enough visibility to, have they built that relationship with their suppliers where they're getting visibility to what's going on in their shop, right? I see manufacturers still treating them as, handshake agreements that are not, real partnerships, right? But we see the most success when it's a real partner. Can they see their on-hand stock of raw components so they can make better decisions about what they can provide to their customers? Or are they just, standing there beating the table and saying, I need 10,000 more units, right? Because they need it, right? But what does that look like, and how are they sharing data with their supply chains, right? How are they sharing, like, this is what's coming at me, let's help them build that partnership. So it really comes down to the relationships people have built in their supply chains. I think we talk about visibility, and I think visibility is important, but the relationship is as important or more important.
Let me ask one quick follow-up, Aaron, please.
Yeah, please.
No, I just, I didn't want to get away from this topic because I had something else too. But if you have a follow-up, that's great.
I'm just curious, and this is probably the impossible question, but that's why I want to ask you, right?
Yeah.
So, a lot of times you're going to have a small manufacturing or fab shop come to you, and they want to grow their business, but they think they're already at capacity, and you're like, well, actually, if you manage this better, we can find 5-7%. Is there any kind of range or things that people might be able to realize?
Well, I hate saying a number, because then the next time I see somebody, they're going to say, well, you promised me this, but I can give examples.
Sure.
Right. I've seen consistently, especially that smaller to mid-sized manufacturer, maybe that's been traditional, it's been using a legacy ERP system, maybe hasn't been running an MRP process, we're going to see a 30 to 40% efficiency when the MRP rules engine is helping them to identify when to buy material, when to make jobs, etc. Right.
Fantastic.
I've also seen the extreme case where, I went into the operation and literally the person in purchasing pulled out a notebook from their drawer and said, these are my purchase orders, right? Like, we get into those extremes. Like, that was a multiple X of throughput in the first month that we went live, right? So I don't want to we're never going to overpromise anything, but the reality is, when you get an ERP system working for you, not against you, but working for you, like, it's a rules engine. It's there to help you, right? And that's the whole key. We've got to get it in a place where it is supporting you. It's helping you to make better decisions. Mm-hmm. And we're going to take a lot of that data entry out. We want to collect data real time from the shop floor. We want to get counts, so that we're not relying on operators. We want to get that the data as accurate as possible. The more accurate that we can get the data, and that's always going to be a challenge, right? Yeah. But the more accurate that we can get it, the more we can dial in the ERP system to drive efficiencies for the operation.
Hey everybody, I just want to take a quick second and thank our sponsor. Manufacturing Matters is sponsored by Tech B2B Marketing. They're a full-service public relations and marketing agency that focuses on technology companies, especially in the energy and automation markets. They provide full-service media relations, investor relations, employee relations, full end-to-end content development, video services, animation, full IT stack development from website integrating with ERP systems, CRM, marketing automation systems, and they bring a whole lot of knowledge and experience about technical markets, since they've been servicing those markets for over 30 years. So if you have any questions, you want to learn more, go to techb2b.com. And now let's get back to the show.
I just have, so many things that you're saying make me think about something else. And I do kind of actually want to go, in terms of getting better data, I want to go back to your point of, you can bring in your dirty data in the beginning, but are you then continuously working on that to clean that data and get better data as you go along?
I think it can be done in stages, right? It's not like you're going to drag that out for a year. But our lessons for us has been, like, I'll be honest, like, we first started as QOC, we thought we had to clean the data up when we were doing that. And then we brought it over, and then we were like, well, how do we even know it's right in the new ERP system, right? We can't compare it because it's different. And so what we usually find is there's the go live, let's get you live. And then a month or two in, then that's when we're going to start saying, okay, let's go through and cleanse all of this. Let's merge these records, let's get rid of this, etc. So we try to, and then it's going to be a constant, I don't want to say battle, but it's a constant thing that we need to be doing. Like, we are really, we have what we call like a health check app, do, where we create metrics around how well are you using your ERP system, right? And that's going to tease out, and we actually score people on that. And so, and you can have metrics around sales, accounting, inventory, and they can be simple things like, have you received all the receipts that you have open? How past due are you on closing? Do you have negative inventories? Do you have, there's all of these different rules, and then we score that to say, okay, how well? And the actual number of the score isn't that important. It's the improvement. Typically, when we turn this on, we see, scores in the 40%. And then when we get up to 80, everybody goes, oh, that feels better. Like it's working for me. It's helping. Like it's beneficial, but it takes, it's focus. Like you have to focus on it. It's an ongoing thing to make sure your data is clean, that you're using your ERP system and you're keeping it clean, right? It's easy to go live with it and then just let it tail off. And all of a sudden you've got negative inventories and you've got all this mess and you're like, well, wait a minute, it's not providing the value it was for me at one point.
I think that's brilliant, because I know one of the questions that Aaron and I had was, how do you design these applications, the tools, the user interfaces, so that they're user friendly, right? And I mean, having that expert guide built into it to be able to suggest recommendations for process modifications without having to go back to an engineer consult, back to QOC right at the beginning, right? I mean, you're really empowering the manufacturer, job shop, or wherever it is. Are there other ways that in addition to the expert guide, that you kind of make these tools accessible?
Yeah, so like the health check, we make it accessible to everybody, right? We want that to be supervisors. We want that to be, leads on the shop floor, that they're looking at their jobs and making sure that they're clean, et cetera, across the board. The other things that we're doing as far as, we get down to the shop floor and we're looking at like, how do we take as many clicks out of it as possible? How do we make it as easy as possible? We want real feedback, right? And I think that's part of our implementation process. We're looking for feedback from the shop floor. We're looking for feedback from people, and we want to intentionally incorporate that feedback so that we get their buy-in, right? There's nothing better than them telling us, hey, if it could do this for me, it would be helpful. And for us to do that and come back to them, and they're automatically bought in because they know that we're listening to them, right? And so having that communication directly to the shop floor, doing this ERP implementation, it doesn't work just to talk to the leadership, right?
Yeah.
Leadership always knows and thinks they know everything going on in the shop floor. Sorry, there's a news flash. It's not true. You have to talk to the people on the shop floor, right? The people that are doing receiving, the people that are shipping, the people that are running the machines, because that's where you find exactly how they're doing the process. And let's hear from them, because you know what? They have wonderful ideas. They have great ideas, right? They may not understand the entire ecosystem of how this is going to work, but they're passionate about helping their business too.
I suspect that's a cultural improvement too, not just operational efficiency, which cultural improvements directly translate to better productivity down the road.
Absolutely. Yeah.
100%. So it's basically just a built-in communication collaboration hub as part of this of your platform.
Yeah, absolutely.
Very cool.
Yeah, and certainly, change management is so often like the number one obstacle. And I was going to say digital implementation, but I would say any implementation, any tool, any new tool that the folks on the floor are expected to use. So it seems like you're going a long way to get that open communication with them. But what still needs to happen from the top down to make sure that this all works?
Yeah. So one of the things that we do, if somebody chose to do it, actually, if we did a Rexio implementation or a new implementation, particularly of Odoo, we use our methodology we call as a 10-10-10. So what the thought process there is, within 3 weeks of starting with us, we want your 10 hardest parts that you make. It could be actually 15 or 8. It doesn't really matter to them. We want a group of parts, bill materials, their associated customers, their associated vendors. We want all the data associated with those parts. And we're going to load it into Odoo, and we're going to make all of our conversations based on the base product, right? And we're going to go quote to cash, buy to pay, and we're going to identify where are the gaps and opportunities. So the opportunities could be maybe Odoo, the base product, does it differently today, but it's a best practice. And we're going to change your process to do that, right? And we're going to get buy-in that right from the leadership from that. And then there's gaps. Where are the gaps? Where do we need to pull in our development team, make a modification to support that? But what we find is doing that process, instead of just giving them a blank whiteboard to dream up whatever they would want, gets us really honed into solving a problem. And the problem is, I have these parts that are really hard to run through the shop. And if I can run these parts through your system, then I can run all of them. I can run 1,000 of them through, right?
Right.
And those conversations start to really lead into some great, you mentioned it, cultural, they get into process, they get into, okay, how is this going to work? And we start getting people in the system, and that starts the change management process, right? We start getting them to drive and to go through it. And that's part of our secret sauce that just kind of helps streamline this process. So we're not sitting here having a blank sheet of paper, and 6 months later, we still have ideas. We want to be very actionable. And, a lot of our implementations we're doing 4 to 6 months, right? For the base implementation. Like, we want this to be geared around the system and the process. And it forces lots of decisions to be made.
It's interesting to me, we haven't really talked about the plant network and infrastructure. There are job shops that will benefit from this who are not leveraging a lot of automation.
True.
Right? It's going to help them quantify from front-end engineering consultation through job costing all the way to production and what our margin is. But can you talk a little bit about the relationship between ERP systems? If you're a larger manufacturer, does the hardware lead the ERP? Does the ERP lead the hardware? Can you talk about that relationship a little bit before we let you go?
Well, I think it's a balance, right? So, with Odoo, we run it on, technically we run it on a cloud or we'll run it on anything. It doesn't really matter, right? Mm-hmm. It comes down to the hardware component for us is, how do I connect to the devices on the shop floor? Whether that's Modbus, whether that's MQTT, whether that's whatever, like, how do I connect to that, right?
Yep.
We're not going to want to make a lot of changes there, right? So we also have the ability to just put simple switches that we can count things going down a conveyor line. We can, every time a robotic process goes to the home position, we automatically touch or break a laser beam. So there's some simple things that we want to do there. But again, I'm going to go back to my original comment about this. Let's not try to do everything at once. Let's try to get the ERP system. Let's connect where it makes sense. We can get that real-time data. But let's to drive the process and make sure we're doing what you're really good at first, drive value, and then at that point at the end, when we're live, then we can step back and say, okay, now we have this value. Let's go replace this. Let's go build this audit. I'm surprised how many times we get done with an ERP system and somebody says, hey, can you help us identify an automation solution for X, right? Can you help us this tool, right? Because we become part of what they are. And now we're in a position, we have the technology, we can connect to almost anything.
Well, I don't want to get too down into the weeds, but I'm just thinking about folks with more legacy systems and, can you deal with that? Is that a contingency to have systems that can properly connect or what, what is kind of the baseline that people need to have to start with ERP?
So I think it's a real challenge in the industry. Like, if I go to FabTech, I go to ProMat, I go to those trade shows and I see all this new technology, right? You talk to the vendors, there's a lot of them that are struggling to connect to these legacy ERP systems because they're all written in old technology that don't support REST APIs and all of those fun things that we can do today. So, there's a lot of things that we've done to support that. Like, we have a customer right now that's running a legacy system. We're not coming in and replacing everything. They didn't have an inventory management system, a warehouse management tool, right? So we put that in, and now we're just kind of creeping our way back to replace. Eventually, a couple of years from now, we'll have replaced the entire ERP system, but we've done it in a very gradual, pragmatic way. And sometimes we even have to write our own endpoints on top of the legacy data so that we can make this thing work the way we need it to, right? So that we can scale this. So it's a balance. Again, it's not a requirement to come in and say, hey, we got to rip everything else out, right? We're right now talking to somebody who's got, 30 distribution facilities. They're running their old legacy system, and we're doing the same. We're talking about doing the same thing. How do we replace their warehouse management tool? How do we just start inchworming our way back to get them on a technology suite that supports their future growth?
And it addresses one of the most, I think, biggest concerns, and maybe, probably most chief executives are going to think about this, but it's not just the initial cost of the software and the development, the deployment, it's the cost of disruption, right? Potential lost productivity if you're trying to do wholesale changes necessarily, there's going to be ramped up times. If you eat the whale one bite at a time, probably a lot less disruptive, obviously.
Yeah, I think it's a lot less disruptive, but I think to your point, there's a carrying and opportunity cost associated with this, right? And I think it's a lot of times we look at the carrying cost of what is it going to cost for software, what is it going to cost for implementation, but we also got to look at what is the cost of not having that visibility today? What are those opportunity costs? What's the cost that I can't connect to this? What's the cost because I don't have visibility, right? And so when we look at that holistically, like this approach where we're no nonsense, right? We're flipping the paradigm on the head. We don't come in with large teams with large burden overheads, right? We're solving problems incrementally. It makes a huge difference for these organizations.
As long as they can survive the price point of initial, discussions and deployment. I mean, if you're offering someone 30% improvement in efficiency of their overall enterprise, that's kind of a no-brainer to a certain extent, especially.
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. No, this is what I love about Odoo, and I don't want to, I know this is not about Odoo, but Odoo is open source. Yeah, it's a low-cost opportunity, right? We're talking about a fraction of what I don't want to say a vendor, but any of the other vendors it's a fraction of the cost, right? So we've even had customers to come to us and say, hey, we want to try this out. Like, let's fail often but early on this. Let's just try it out. Like the cost of us starting a project with you guys and going and solving this problem, if it fails, we're not risking the business and we're not spending $1 million, right? So that I love those because we're going to win every time, right? Because technology scales and it's there, but we have to kind of prove it, right? And so let's go find your hardest thing to prove and let's go do it.
I think it's brilliant. Build trust over time. Always a good solution. Good go to business strategy.
Yeah, and if I'm honest, like this comes from me sitting in running this manufacturing firm, having to put an ERP system in and having to go through the traditional process, right, where we ripped everything out, and I had to train people. Every consultant I had come in, I had to train like how do you schedule a brake press, like every person, right? That's the big difference, right? Whether it's a brake press or plastics or it's food. That's what we tried to build here at QOC. Not tried, that's what we've built. We have people that have been in industry for 25, 30 years that have that experience. That's totally different when you have that conversation.
Well, and I think looking at your experience there, I wanted to get into kind of this democratization of digital tools. I think so many companies say, well, sure, that Nestle can afford that, but can I, some mom and pop spaghetti maker, can I afford that? What was your perspective from the user's viewpoint of, what was your make or break decision? Yes, it's a no brainer, but can we afford this up front? How do you approach that?
Yeah. Particularly, I'm going to jump to Odoo. I won't talk about other vendors. I've been through that. I paid the big price in previous lives, right? But particularly when Odoo, you're talking about $40, $50 a user per month, right? It's a very, very low cost in the scheme of things, right? Yes. And so, like, I have a negative side of it, right? There's sometimes I get into these big enterprise, decisions, and they're like, well, you're half the price of the other guy.
What are we giving up? You're not, and we're supported by 1 million users. But you can make the decision you want to, sir. It's all good.
Yeah, but it's also hard, right? I totally respect. Like, nobody really gets in too much trouble for choosing SAP or NetSuite. Like, those decisions sometimes are really easy to push through the board and make those decisions. Like, nobody but if you go to a newer technology like Odoo, that's changing dramatically, right? So if I go back 3-4 years in our business, we were just working with the smaller companies, right? But that has definitely changed dramatically. But yeah, it becomes really interesting conversations sometimes when we look at the price point. It's just price is not the decision point.
Okay.
I like it.
All right. So what haven't we asked you? What are your big tips that you want to share about ERP that we haven't talked about?
I would say get a good partner. Like, no matter who it is, find somebody who knows your industry, right? And is passionate about your business. and is not just dealing with this from a, like, and I'll get on a soapbox a little bit here. Like, again, I love our tech people, but we're not a tech, like some people call us a tech company, and I kind of cringe because that's not what we are. We're a problem-solving company. And those problems are solved best when I take a business consultant who knows the industry, a developer who understands the technology, and a whiteboard, right? That's when I get the best result for a customer, and that's what we're focused on. And so we're just no nonsense. We just get after it and like helping people solve their problems. It's not that hard. The innovation is take care of your customers and take care of your people.
Right on.
All right.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Well, thank you, Paul. I really appreciate you taking the time to talk with us today. And thanks to our viewers for joining us on Manufacturing Matters. So if anyone has any questions for Paul, please go ahead and put them in the comments below if you're watching on LinkedIn or YouTube or wherever you might be watching. You can also see past episodes of Manufacturing Matters on our website, which is manufacturing-matters.com, or on your favorite platform. So for now, do us a favor, hit like, subscribe, and keep tuning in.
Thanks again, Paul.
Thank you.